None of the content on this or any episode of the Kratom Science Podcast and Kratom Science Journal Club, nor on any of the pages of KratomScience.com, should be considered medical claims or medical advice. This is the Kratom Science Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Gallagher, blog and social media writer for KratomScience.com. Your source for all things Kratom. Episode 63, we welcome back Soren Shade of Top Tree Herbs. He produces the new podcast, Clandestine Conversations with Hamilton Morris. This is recorded live in Pittsburgh, and I chew fresh kratom leaf for the first time.
So we're live, we're running.
Yeah.
We're gunning, all right. I brought you some fresh leaf kratom. There's about 50 of them. I'm from the northern peninsula of West Virginia, in a little town called New Martinsville. Our greenhouse is in the area. It's not in New Martinsville. I'm not going to go into any more specifics than that, but we call them our Appalachian strain, so as not to get too specific, but also to honor where they're grown. Yeah, you're holding one of the big boys there too. That one's bigger than your hand.
I already put my nose up to it. It doesn't smell like anything, so I'll have this one.
The flowers of them are so fragrant.
Really?
I mean, whenever our mother tree, which is the one tree we had outside in the summer, was blooming, it had hundreds and hundreds of the little spiky ball blooms. They almost look like little coronaviruses. And there was like 2 bees per flower. I mean, it was just, it vibrated with humming. I mean, it was so densely packed with pollinators. They absolutely adored it. And it's just guaranteed the first kratom tree that these local honeybees had ever run into their entire life. Yeah. They liked it. I'll grab one as well.
That's another bonus, because I keep pollinators in my yard. Like, I let the goldenrod grow. I mow around dandelions. And we had a ton of honeybees this year. That's stuff that's growing out of my wall, the stone crop. That they love that too. They love the goldenrod especially. Like every kind of bee was on that. But we had a lot of honeybees. I'm probably going to keep honey up in the corner up here. But yeah, Soren also brought me a little kratom tree, and thanks for that.
Yeah, a little sapling. These are, so all of the kratom trees that we have are genetically identical. Okay. None of them have come from seeds yet, although we're going to try to propagate some of the seeds from this year. They're all just cuts from the kratom tree. So kratom grows in tiny little, like, bifurcating nodes. So every 8 to 10 inches, it'll split and do a little V. Yeah. And then those, every 8 to 10 inches, will split and do a little V. Well, I guess it's more like an upside down peace sign, because it'll continue straight and it'll have these 45-degree offshoots from it. And you can cut either right above the node or below the node and mist it, stick it in a little bit of water, and it'll have roots coming out of it in 2 or 3 days. Put it in the soil, and you'll have as many clones of that kratom tree as you want that take off growing like a weed. I mean, it's remarkable. So we have probably 300 of them right now in the greenhouse, rooting over the winter, and the goal is to be able to offer kratom saplings to anyone who'd like to grow it themselves. Yeah. Because rumor has it, we might not be able to sell kratom in a year or so. So if suddenly thousands of people were growing it, that would be just horrible for the law, wouldn't it? To have so many empowered kratom people out there. Yeah. I mean, once the saplings are out of our greenhouse, we don't have any control over whether or not people decide to uproot them in the event of a ban or anything. So I would hate for anyone to break the law, of course. But yes, I do think it's a good idea right now to get a kratom sapling and grow it yourself and be self-sufficient.
Yeah. It's been a long. I've been doing this podcast for 3 years. I'm overdue to start growing kratom. So thanks for bringing that.
Of course,
I'm definitely gonna grow it. And what do you think about like home grow laws? Because home grow of marijuana is a big issue that we're talking about in the state right now, and there's a lot of pro-legalization politicians, and they won't say a word about home grow. It's kind of different with Kratom, I think, because I think to grow your own supply, you'd probably have to have like a mini forest of trees, wouldn't you?
Well, I would have thought that previously as well, especially in the like micronized powder paradigm, where it just looks like a ton of product and ground up in a powder in a little pile. So we're looking at these leaves right now. Obviously the listener can't see that, but they're about the size of our hand. They weigh on average about 1.5 grams. They're about 70% water weight. Put it on the microphone and
it's a nice little hat for my
if there's any dolphins out there, go ahead and use some echolocation and you can see it. Not the right medium to express this, but it dries out to be about 0.5 gram. And so I guess that's everyone's different, but myself personally, I chew on about 3 leaves, which in dried weight is like 1.5 to 2 grams, and that's plenty for me. And these kratom trees will put on, I haven't counted them yet. I'm going to be doing that tomorrow. Actually, I'm picking up some dry ice while I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm going to be documenting from where on the tree and which tree I'm plucking the leaves and putting them on dry ice, and they'll be sent to Dr. Grundmann and our lab partner in Austin, Sante Labs, tomorrow, and they're going to do some analysis on them and really poke into them. But I'm going to count how many leaves are on the trees tomorrow, and I send them this information. I'm guessing upwards of 1,000 of these 3-year-old trees. You can strip an entire branch of its leaves, get about 50 leaves from it, give it about a week, and that tree will be completely filled with leaves again. Wow. I mean, it's remarkably... You could probably have... If you were a moderate kratom consumer using... Everyone consumes it differently, so the route of administration is completely different. But, myself, I would be able to sustain myself on one very small tree with a daily use pattern of maybe 3 to 9 leaves. So... It's actually pretty sustainable, I think, for the long-term personal use and home grow. I think the reason it's not a big issue is because no one's been successful growing kratom in the United States before. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing all this research with scientists, and our greenhouse is just fixed in all kinds of temperature sensors and all sorts of stuff, so that we can put together very comprehensive how to grow your own kratom and empower people to be able to do it. Where it's previously been a black box of knowledge.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, how are you still working with Grundmann on that survey?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We it's going quite well, and we're having some difficulties with it at the same time. So we're still hoping for more responses. We need more responses of the top tree tea bag associated responses. We have thousands and thousands of people that came in who are passionate about kratom, who left, who filled out the 25-minute survey, and we're very grateful for them doing that. But we've been doing a lot of analytical work in the background, measuring 7 different kratom alkaloids, everything from mitragynine to speciophyllene to isorancophylline to mitriphyllene, coranoxine, A, B, a lot of different kratom alkaloids, and we know exactly the different milligram ratios in each of our tea bags by strain on that. And the point is that we're going to hopefully associate this quantitative data of the alkaloid distribution in the product across a mass response people using what their reported effects were from this type of tea bag, what they use this tea bag for, and then try to make sense of, people with X issue or desire lean on the products that have 2x isorancophylline in it, as opposed to people that are looking for Y, they look for the ones that are speciogynin heavy. That's an interesting thing to leapfrog some more to jumpstart some different research further down the road. This is kind of like a very broad strokes thing. We have about 100 surveys right now. Dr. Grundmann would like us to have about 250 that are teabag related, and we're working on some things all across the board. Stuff with Hamilton coming out as well. They're going to hopefully try to encourage more responses for this, but we have a year, and we're really not all that worried about missing that. The only issues that we've been running into is that we suddenly really wanted to hurry it along whenever the UN trial and hearing came up, and we were like, oh, this would be great information to present to them. Several thousand people talking about how the safety of it and how it's not affected them poorly. But unfortunately, we didn't hit that deadline because that wasn't a deadline that we knew existed when we first started.
Yeah. I know, and they only gave like 17 days, and then they had to be sued to extend it by the AKA.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We can get into that in a bit. It was an absolute mess.
Yeah. But okay, let's
enjoy this. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you tear the stem off?
Yeah, de-stemming it, and you're doing it just the same way I did the first couple hundred that I pulled myself. Or you end up destroying the leaf in the process of de-stemming it. But the nothing in the stem is bad. Like when we mill these for our tea bags, the stem stays in it, and the petiole and all that is a part of the product. It's not bad for you. It's just it can tear up the inside of your mouth, so that's why it's pulled out. Okay. So what we then do is
I screwed it up.
I hope that sounded as good as it sounded to me. It
sounded a little bit. Yeah, I think we heard it.
All right.
We just roll it up
in a little quid, and then we're gonna just put it in our mouth and try not to chew on it too much, because if you chew on it too much, then you start getting like little leaf pieces that you're spitting out in the next 20 minutes. It's not a problem. But yeah, you stick it in your mouth and and I just really, it's the whole chewing on it is just to like push saliva in it and out of it. I can see, so Brian's face right now is kind of puckered up.
It tastes like a leaf on any tree,
like
that
on
you would
any
get
tree,
fresh.
And then you kind of just get saliva coming in and out of it, and you will swallow some of that saliva, but you want to concentrate any kind of pooled saliva under your tongue, where you have those two giant blood vessels. We've already chewed on it enough. So I don't know. We do have to spit it out, and we did not prepare for this.
There's a garbage can over
I'll grab that. I'm definitely starting to get some of the bitter. Once you start getting a strong bitter liquid, play around with that for a little bit, and your mouth will start to go. Oh no, I'm gonna go ahead and spit.
You put the whole thing out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
mine is like a million pieces.
Yeah.
And yours is like one piece.
Well, this is probably the 100th leaf I've chewed this week.
Yeah.
I've been harvesting this entire week, and it's manual labor, and I'm standing on my feet a lot on gravel, and my back starts to hurt, and I get a little tired. And there's nothing better in the world than just picking the leaf from the tree that you're harvesting from, rolling it up, chewing it, and then feeling a little better after 30 minutes or so. Yeah.
So it takes about the same time as like
I've noticed some instant effect from some very potent leaves, but usually it's about 15-20 minutes, depending on how numb my mouth is really the first indicator. But I will chew on 2 or 3 in a row to get the effect I'm looking for.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It really does taste like any old leaf on a tree.
Yeah. It doesn't taste, it's not bad. It's just like, if you're put a random leaf in your mouth when you're a kid or something. Yep, that was it. They're nice and green looking. Like it looks like that was healthy for me. I mean, lots of chlorophyll in there. Chlorophyll's good for you.
Yeah, so these are great to just chew on. we've got racks and racks and racks of them drying right now. And I put 3 to 5 of those in a thermos, some lemon, boiling water, cap it 20 minutes, and it is a really fine tea. It's incredibly pleasurable. It's a little less bitter than a standard tea bag would be, and I find the effects to be definitely more in the alert range than any of the other effects that Kratom typically presents. So
now, is that because the dried leaf has more 7-hydroxy in it?
These are all questions that will hopefully be answered very soon. So, yeah, our lab, our partner lab in Austin, Texas, Sante Laboratory, they are phenomenal, really scientifically oriented people. They do GCMS testing on our Kratom leaves for us, and they show us 8 different alkaloids that are present and what the exact, like, the 100th percentage of different of the alkaloids are in them. So I wish I should pull this up and we can talk about it later, but yeah, we will know if this is speciogynin heavy, or if this is mitraphyline heavy, if there's isorancophylline in it, or if there's not any mitragynine in it, but there's a whole lot of something else in it. Yeah. Because that seemed to be the issue that McCurdy was having back in whenever he was growing himself and never tested. He never found any mitragynine in the leaves that they tested for, but I'm not sure if they tested for anything but mitragynine.
This is when he was still at Mississippi, right?
I believe, was he in Mississippi, or was it a satellite campus of UC?
He was at Ole Miss originally. Okay. Transcribing it, Lance McMahon, the head of pharmacodynamics down there, I'm transcribing in a podcast I did with him, but he was telling the whole story about McCurdy and Bonnie Avery coming over to Florida. I mean, he was also talking about it's they don't know either exactly what's going on yet, because he was talking about, well, we haven't really found any 7-hydroxy in the original fresh leaf plant material anywhere. He was talking about some folks in Germany were looking at it and they never found any, but it might get there because you're adding oxygen to mitragynine, so that might occur with the drying process. But are you gonna be selling the dried material in tea bags?
That is ultimately the goal. We really want to make it available for everyone because we're super excited for it as a product. We think other people will be as well. But we're not going to sell it until we get like these 2 to 3 different lab separate confirmations that so we know what's in it, and we also want to know what's not in it. Our greenhouse is very safe. It's been used for like historically tomatoes and cucumbers and just like a nursery for a business that's been running for 20-30 years now.
Cool.
And there's never been an issue with there are any kind of contaminants in the plant. But if Kratom is a bioaccumulator, kind of like cannabis is, then we just need to be very cautious that it wasn't built on a foundation of a house that had asbestos, or there's no heavy metals from
volcanoes in West Virginia,
from a volcano, or a compost pile that might have been contaminated with some fossil fuel or some oil or something that got spilled on at a time. It's West Virginia. So we're just gonna run these tests. We're pretty confident they're gonna be clean, but we're not gonna sell it until we get these tests run. So
I can feel my tongue is a little numb.
Yeah, I'm when you were talking about transcribing, I got my alert and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I can see why they added sugar to that.
Most certainly. It takes some time getting used to it. But eventually you kind of just associate the effect with the flavor, and then very quickly my brain just switched, and I started really finding a lot of pleasure in chewing on the leaves and drinking my tea black, I suppose you'd say.
I'll definitely have to try a tea with these probably tomorrow. But
you have like an Instapot or a pressure cooker by any chance?
Yeah, well, yeah, both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to put 5 to 10. I mean, it depends on how many people and how many beverages you want, what strength and what you're going for. But I like to put a decent amount of fresh leaves in a Instapot and then like put it on an oatmeal setting and just get the pressure really high for a little while and then let it come down naturally. And I find that's a great way to get a really potent brew in a short period of time, because in Thailand, in Indonesia, these Southeast Asian countries, whenever they make a kratom tea to drink themselves or to share among a group of friends, family, for recreational purposes or for productivity purposes, they have a pot boiling with 10 to 50 leaves, depending on the amount of people, for 2 to 3 hours, just to really facilitate the extraction. And in Instapot, you can cut down the needed boiling period to 10-15 minutes just by utilizing the ideal gas law.
So they are good for something. Because my wife got one through some point system at her work, but she put a chicken in it, and I'm like, no, chickens are meant to, no, this isn't working, it's too quick. The meat was it didn't work. So we really haven't used it for a lot.
It serves me very well for rice, beans, quinoa, and kratom tea.
Nice.
What else do you need in life?
Rice and beans, I can see that, because, as long as they come out soft, they're good.
Yeah, I mean, it's America. You can shoot someone and get a less sentence than having like a half-smoked joint thrown in your car by the cop that pulled you over for speeding. It's a backwards legal prioritization. Yeah, definitely.
And also movies, nudity's a lot worse than severed heads. And
yeah, if we really want to deconstruct the value systems that we're raised on, I mean, it's backwards. We got to do some like talk therapy to that inner Puritan that like the American legacy is built on. Come here, work hard, pleasure's bad, pain is good. Just aspect of Dr. Hart had a great quote. I think he was quoting a professor, or might have been Santiana, or a journalist of some sort, but this was kind of like the kernel of truth that he thought underlied America's prohibitionist bent, which was, and I'm paraphrasing here, in America, someone's always worrying that someone else is having fun or feeling good. Yeah. And I mean, it's irrational, but that does seem to really kind of be the crux of so much. Really. I don't want to use flagrant language in this public recording, but it pisses me off. No, you're allowed to. I'm allowed to. If it gives you pleasure. Be more respectful and be thoughtful of it, and not just be reduced to screaming like obscenities at a power greater than me. I've done that. Feels good, right? I told you about some emails I sent to some people before we recorded, because I perceive them as authority figures and that aren't necessarily interested in the right interests. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that. I like the podcast that you let me carry on our feed about the survey. Hamilton opened with, there's so many people that are on quitting Kratom, and they kind of thought that this wasn't going to give them any problems. They could take as much as possible. And there's a lot of people who just don't want to talk about that side of it, that some people can develop a bad habit. And I thought that was a good place to start. It's kind of like, I think kind of like what you're doing with Top Tree is kind of promoting responsible use. Like, we have leaves here. I could probably chew this whole bag of leaves if I wanted to, but it's kind of like the method of administration kind of keeps you not wanting to. It'd be a hell of a lot of work to get
too much of a buzz off of this bag of leaves here.
Right.
But just the same with the tea, I guess. But we kind of talked about this a little in the first one. It's just kind of people are just gobbling too much, and probably the harm reduction, pro-legalization side kind of has a responsibility to promote responsible use. Like we all know, we can a couple glasses of wine is better than drinking a whole bottle of whiskey.
Totally. I mean, I love the idea behind the whole harm reduction movement.
Yeah.
But I think the politics of the name is it's obvious that it's heralding from a prohibitionist legacy, and I think that we should strive for a social arrangement where it's not considered harm reduction, but rather enjoyment optimization.
Yeah,
you're gonna have more fun on the. Most people will have more fun, and I think in terms of long-term sustainability, all people have more fun on that 2 to 3 glasses of wine night than a bottle and a half. Yeah. Yes, that's harm reduction, not have a bottle and a half of Jameson, rather have 2.5 glasses of some red wine, but it's not, you're not just trying to reduce the harm in that situation. You're trying to optimize the enjoyment and the pleasure you get out of it. And I think the same thing comes from, you can completely flip it from the hardest drug of them all, alcohol, that we're just talking about, to perhaps a softer drug. I mean, this obviously the soft hard is just a foolish dichotomy, and shouldn't even been using that legacy, prohibitionist legacy language. But like caffeine, on the other hand, you're gonna have more pleasure and enjoyment out of coffee if you're not having 4 or 5 hour energies in a day, but instead you're having maybe a cup of coffee in the morning and then a refill mid-afternoon for some boost. It's optimization of pleasure and the enjoyment of it. And you're reducing the harm simultaneously. So in regards to Kratom specifically, the route of administration, the method that you're using, like a bitterish liquid, like a tea, that it has some built-in inefficiencies in the extraction process, gonna have in my opinion, a more pleasurable time with that than you are if you're swallowing bunch of powder in a protein shaker with some orange juice. Even if the effects are the same, you're minimizing the stuff that you're taking that isn't necessary. All the powdered leaves that can lead to some nausea or stomach upsetness or difficult bowel movements. It's not in there if you're chewing and spitting a leaf or if you're making tea. So it's enjoyment and pleasure optimization rather than harm reduction. But I mean, that's not disregarding the fact that people can fall into a hard rut with Kratom use. And I do think that there is some things to blame in regards to prohibition, the lack of education that people were receiving around how to use it properly, like in Thailand and in the areas where I always say Thailand as the example, because that's where a lot of the ethnopharmacological research comes from. But there's a culture around proper consumption of Kratom that's not here. People can begin using Kratom in the United States in ADX extract forms from smoke shops, whereas in Thailand or Indonesia, you're not ever going to accidentally stumble upon Kratom in an ADX formulation. You're going to come across it from a family member or a friend who has experience using it, who was taught how to use it.
And it's legal now there. Do you know anything about whether we're gonna be able to get Kratom from Thailand and start using it? Because I've heard, the one thing I've heard about it in one of the studies that I think Darshan Singh did out of University of Science, Malaysia, is...
Norm MacDonald.
I worked down at the University of Science there.
Yeah. I am going to put them in there. But, they found that, Malaysian kratom had 12% mitragynine. Thai kratom had 66% mitragynine.
By weight?
By 66% of alkaloids was mitragynine, and 12% of alkaloids was in Malaysian kratom. So that's going to be interesting if it's that high mitragynine and they start drying it out and shipping it to the United States. I don't know if it'll be stronger or in my case I would use less of it if it was stronger, but I'm sure there's probably American businessmen over there right now trying to buy up some cheap property with kratom trees on it. But
I've heard that there's big extraction plant being, I don't know if a plant's the right word for it, but an extraction facility being set up there to do concentrates and stuff, and I guess for the purpose of saving on shipping, international shipping from Thailand to the U.S., just to have it in concentrate form already. But I'm not all too cued into it from there. All of this, my attention's been focused on the UN WHO stuff as of late. But that's so interesting. Man, I'm gonna have to go. Maybe you can put it in the show notes, or maybe just send it to me personally afterwards. But I would love to read that Darshan Singh article comparing the concentrations of mitragynine in Thai and Indonesian ones.
But yeah, I could send it to you. But what do you think about the whole WHO UN thing?
I get like a really anxious lump in my stomach whenever I think about it. Is mostly what it is. I have a full body no, please, why are you doing this reaction to it. I think it's really complicated and confusing. And I think there's a whole lot of speculation that can be had as to just why this is in front of the WHO and the UN right now. Who of the US parties are responsible for it being in front of the UN WHO's plate? A lot of this is really speculation, but I think the stuff that is fact that we can talk about and share with the public is that, and you've said this 100 times before, and we're all very grateful for you saying this in the community, that kratom's not going to be illegal tomorrow. It's not going to be illegal in early December whenever they make the announcement as to whether or not they will dismiss kratom, or they'll have their 1-year review with an expert committee that they'll put together. So kratom's not going to be made illegal tomorrow. So I guess going over the timeline would be a good idea. We are past the point of soliciting for petition signatures on the Federal Register. Yeah. We are past the point of presenting arguments to the WHO, their hearing, and we are currently all waiting for them to put together their findings and their recommendations of what next to do for kratom, phenibut, the plethora of synthetic cannabinoids, and I think 1 or 2 synthetic cathinones, and maybe an opioid or 2 in that.
Which are called bath salts. That's the cathinones, right?
Lovingly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's from the cat plant, which is also chewed as leaf originally. Yeah.
Which this is also pausing for a second on the kratom. Damn shame that all those other innocent substances are being swept by this ban as well and receiving no attention. I mean, for one, synthetic cannabinoids get a lot of bad rap.
I went out and bought some phenibut because I don't know what it does, and I'm gonna study it a little more before I try it. But I think it's a GABA thing, which I thought maybe it would help me quit drinking, but I haven't had that much of a drink in a few weeks, so I don't really need it, so I'm not going to take it. But I just got it just in case it's out. It's going to be outlawed. I just wanted to get some.
I really like Phenibut.
Really?
Both from a historical, like, cultural, like, removed looking at it phase, and also from taking it myself.
Yeah.
It was originally developed for Russian cosmonauts to deal with anxiety going to space.
Oh, wow.
And then it was prescribed for a time in Russia. It is got a phenethylamine structure to it, which comes from mescaline and more commonly seen in 2CB, but it is primarily GABA A, GABA B. I think it just acts as a GABA A, GABA B in the brain, and it takes about 2.5, 3 hours to kick in, and then it's like 8 hours of anti-anxiety. It's of all the different nootropics out there, this one, in my experience, most closely fits the, like, what you have in your mind when you think of nootropic, of like, this gives me more confidence and increases my verbal fluidity and makes my attention sharper. I think it can have all that. It can also, I mean, it's I don't want to just laud praise on Phenibut the whole time, but it helps a lot of people with a lot of different things. It also has recreational value. It can be addictive if you use it for like a daily for a week or two on end, in which case it can be very hard to get off of, and it can lead to seizures and stuff when you quit untimely. So you just have to know what you're doing to optimize your enjoyment. But I mean, you know, Phenibut is wonderful, and it's probably multi-$100 million market in the United States. These synthetic cannabinoids that are also going to be made illegal, they might have seen a round of a head shop or two as a spice agent, but they, you know, usually these are just compounds that some research chemist made a little patent for, described how to make it, shows the pharmacology in rats, that it is a cannabinoid based on the structure. You also expect it to be a cannabinoid, and then it'll just be picked up by some Netherlands or Chinese lab, and then hits the market for 2 to 3 months, and then it gets put on a regulatory bill and it's made illegal. And that's it for this compound. And this compound could, who knows, we're not allowed to research it anymore after made it legal, could be a very valuable medicine or therapeutic agent or research tool. A lot of good has come from synthetic cannabinoids. Not whenever they're sprayed onto sage and then sold to teenagers at gas stations. In an uneducated context, a lot of good hasn't come that way. But, you know, of the many things that synthetic cannabinoids have taught us so far, is one, that a full cannabinoid agonist can result in death. That's not something that scientists ever knew until these synthetic cannabinoids hit the market and there were overdoses related to it. And we learned a whole new thing about one of the largest systems in the body, the cannabinoid system, through this compounds. And they're just being made illegal because it's the hot topic thing to do. Same with these synthetic cathones. They're considered bath salts. You know, there's some absolute wonderful compounds that are synthetic cathinones, like 3-MMC, 4-MMC. These are compounds that could probably rival MDMA in PTSD antidepressant treatments if used properly, if the right studies around it, if in a medical context with research and stuff. But instead, it is unilaterally being made illegal. And that's honestly one of the most frustrating things about this whole FDA and WHO ban process, is that I don't want to concentrate all my energy on just protecting Kratom. I want to be anti-prohibitionist everywhere, because I think prohibition of anything could ignorantly in the future, not being able, or in the present, not being able to foresee the future, cause some issues. There's going to be a researcher that is looking into treating cancer pain, and he thinks that potent cannabinoids are the best bet to do it. Well, now there's 500 illegal compounds that he's not allowed to look into. Or she is allowed to look into. I mean, it's really, prohibition has never, ever solved any of the problems it attempts to fix. or it claims to fix. But sorry, that was my tangent.
That was a good tangent
on why Kratom isn't the only one to focus on. But
yeah,
so early December, the WHO will make a statement for all of the compounds that are on the docket.
Yeah,
and say whether or not that there's no reason for them to suspect there's abuse, potential, whatever, and that it wasn't right for it to be brought up to them, and that it can go on being the way it is, and then that's it. And that would be the best case scenario for, they look at all the evidence, they hear this, say, hey, this is all kinds of overblown. Kratom isn't deserving of this kind of scrutiny and review. We don't need to do an expert committee on drug dependency. We don't need to have them look at this. More than likely, they're going to come out and say, all right, we're going to spend a year, we're going to put together an expert committee on drug review, and they're going to look at all the literature on Kratom, they're going to be given some money, and they're going to do some sort of testing on Kratom, and they're going to figure out whether or not it should be made banned illegally. We'll get back to you in a year.
Yeah.
And in that year, I'm sure the AKA is going to ask for $1,000 from each and every person to go towards some sort of petitioning or lobbying or science that will be presented to them. And I'm sure that there's going to be a bunch of businesses in the industry on both sides that are going to just be piling on money and science to this expert panel. I mean,
it's really just a waste of resources.
It really is. I mean, I wonder if there's anything more important or pressing in the world that they could focus on right now. No, it's definitely drug hysteria is the most important thing to dedicate our research to. Valuable time of the scientists. Let's look at
really
a leaf that's been used for hundreds of years, if not millennia, and see whether or not that it's. I mean, it can't even put into words how stupid it is to be a prohibitionist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be like 8 people that are considered expert scientists by the UN deciding whether or not Kratom will be illegal over the course of a year. And because we live in a neoliberal age, I imagine that these people are going to be subject to an absolute boatload of lobbying and money and attempts to influence them. There are 8 people who are publicly named as being responsible for the fate of a multi-billion-dollar industry. Like, it's going to get messy. That's my prediction.
And so we'll have to outlaw it if they do, because we're part of that agreement, right?
If after, so in, the worst case scenario for early December would be that it goes into a year review, and then fast forward a year review comes by, and they say, we are corrupt, we accepted a lot of money, and therefore Kratom is made illegal, and we don't know how to read proper peer-reviewed articles. The United States will be treaty bound to follow that, and Kratom will be made illegal in the United States for presumably import, growth, and sale, except in the 5 KCPA states, who are kind of be out of luck unless they somehow got kratom saplings and were able to grow them themselves. In which case,
really,
I would imagine it would be like a cannabis situation.
Yeah.
Our federalist system's very intriguing because we've got these nested layers of independence where the municipality has a layer of independence, and then the county, and then the states, and then the state has its own constitution, and then we've got our federal system, and the federal system has its own constitution, and then we have this myth of some international law, which is really just whatever the U.S. says goes for 153 other countries. But who knows how it's gonna play out, other than I don't think too many other substances that have been put in front of the UN or the WHO for this purpose have come out of it still legal.
Really? Okay.
I mean, it's just, Kratom is the only substance in United States history that was put on the Federal Register with an intent to ban, was eventually revoked and revoked. And I think Kava actually managed to fare well. I might regret saying this because I didn't look into it as well, but I think Kava might have made it out of the other end of this expert review in positive light, where they're like, actually, this liver damage claims is a little bit exaggerated, and it's not a menace to
And
society.
what about
therefore we keep it.
Tylenol and alcohol? They have an exception for tobacco and alcohol. I was looking at the
specifically
WHO.
in the because it was written in 61 and 71, so they were all sipping on scotch and smoking cigarettes while they were writing.
They're like,
this
of
thing.
course not this. So it's completely irrational.
Unless they are stemming from a place of simply wanting to ensure that no one else is having fun or feeling pleasure around them, unless they're coming from that place, it's irrational. But if like Hart, tried to get the class to think of that the prohibitionist mindset is coming from a place of just trying to keep pleasure from other people, then it all kind of starts making sense.
Yeah, really.
It's like, caffeine is really good for productivity and work, and it doesn't make me feel all that good. But smoking on a joint might make me, stop working after 6-7 hours. I'm a little tired. I'll probably be more productive tomorrow. I'm gonna think something philosophical and then fall asleep. It's like, oh, no. This guy's feeling good and he's not making us any money. No. This stuff is illegal. And it's like, then things start to make sense. And all of this is, of course, just like for comedic effect, like drastically reducing like the historical like facts behind like why these things are illegal, but like they all kind of do really have this as a common feature behind them. If it causes pleasure, then illegal.
I don't know. Michael Pollan was talking about it, and I think
is it the Industrial Revolution coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting one where people were commonly like drinking alcohol through the whole day. Like Benjamin Franklin in his autobiography wrote that he would help whenever he was like a young guy working, he would help his coworkers, his comrades, like save money by convincing them not to get trashed at lunch before they go back to work and spend all their pennies on alcohol before going back to work and then had a little bit more money, because the belief was you needed a strong you needed a strong drink to be strong to do hard work. Strong drink, be strong, boom, 1780 brain rationality connects. And there's the same kind of rationality and use of alcohol is prevalent in Europe and Britain at the time. I very quickly read Pollan's latest book, and some entrepreneur decided to start introducing coffee and tea breaks in the middle of the day, and then suddenly saw increased productivity. And then boom.
So he would give them free coffee. And I mean, Kratom should be in that category. We should convince all the titans of industry that Kratom increases productivity. And it tastes terrible, so they're not getting any pleasure out of it. I promise.
Especially when you're doing these things, right? I that's an interesting lens to look at things through. I definitely. I wonder if the receding numbers of blue-collar jobs in the United States has any relationship with Kratom slowly losing its legal setting, whereas things like LSD and psilocybin having productivity enhancement for jobs like coding in the tech sector, suddenly there being way more tech sector jobs. Oh wow, this is a productivity enhancing drug for these jobs, and we need this. So slowly that starts being introduced into legal. I mean, this is a conspiracy of capitalism, of course. It's all things. It's an interesting lens.
When I'm trying to explain what it is to people and they think it's just some, a horrible, dangerous drug, and I'm like, there's a lot I see on Reddit all the time on our Kratom that, a lot of people are like, should I bring it with me when I'm flying? I'm going on vacation. Should I bring this with me? And I'm always like, it's not illegal. I don't just do it out in the open. And like some people are like, oh, my wife doesn't know I do this. And, I'm always like, why? It's not illegal. You should do it out in the open and make it normal.
Right.
There's always that.
Well, I mean, that it kind of makes sense, just by association of you're going to a windowless head shop or smoke shop.
Yeah.
You're going in, and there's a lot of paraphernalia for these drugs that you have been culturally persuaded to believe are bad and should be kept out of the light and dark, and associated with that is a minimally packaged, zero backstory containing micronized green powder that you shovel down your throat, and there is a consciousness change. It's like, okay, this is something I need to be quiet about and be ashamed of and keep hidden, and I definitely can't be on an airplane with. Whereas if I walk into your house with a tiny little sapling and a Ziploc bag full of trees of leaves that look like poplar leaves, there's not going to be any shame or embarrassment associated with that. It's going to be this is an interesting herb. Let's pop it in the mouth and chew it and see what it looks like. And I can do that with anything, with anyone. We were at a music festival the beginning of the summer, and we're making fresh kratom leaf tea. We were making tea from the tea bags, and we had a pile of fresh leaves there for people to chew on, and we had the trees. And because we had the trees, because we had the leaves, because we had the tea bags, because it was all set up and pretty, and we knew the history and the backstory, and we told everyone, there was no one that we ran into that had any sort of fears in trying it and tasting it the first time. A lot of people did what you did when you chewed on the leaf. Their mouth got real tiny and they puckered up and they went, "Oh, no, no." A lot of people turned us down on taste alone, but there was no guilty consciousness in the way. There was no self-righteousness, or there was no sensation that people were breaking from an identity of a law-abiding, rule-following, good citizen that they think that they are. They're not having to change their identity by doing a drug when they're looking at a fresh leaf or they're drinking on tea. Whereas you go to a head shop and everything just all around you screams gray area market. We are just barely legal. Everything in this store is 18 years old in one day. Ooh. No, you don't have that. Like it's it's a tree and it's a leaf, and that's really kind of our mission. Is we're just trial and erroring here, anti-prohibitionist tactics, and Kratom is a really easy one because it works. It's not dangerous. It's got a robust history of use, and absolutely everything about Kratom in the United States is just bad for its PR right now. Being micronized powder, not having a backstory, being associated with a group of people who are just getting trounced by the media as being opioid addicts, meth addicts, unemployed, or just people who are just actually down on their luck, left behind by society, who found themselves into some substance abuse issues, or maybe just using substance to feel better, and it's not actually an issue for them, and we should let them keep doing anything. But anyway, it's now associated with a class of people that is being looked upon by a lot of people. I mean, it's just all bad PR for Kratom, and the idea is that there's no reason Kratom should have this bad PR. Should be very easy to break this alienated relationship that we have with Kratom here in the United States by just simply demonstrating that it's a tree, it's a leaf, it is tea. There's the carving in the Buddhist temple from 1826 that is the oldest written historical documentation of kratom use. More than likely, it's been used for millennia. That's what Pascal Tanguay believes. He believes it's been used for, he said 8,000 years in the podcast with Hamilton, which I don't know of any sources for that. I don't know, but you know what? Hey, he knows more about it than I do. So I will cite it as Pascal Tanguay believes that Kratom has been used for over 8,000 years.
Yeah.
I think that in 8,000 years of use, if it was better to just swallow it, that, they would, because
Yeah.
Thousands of years in use in the Amazon, they know that, okay, you brew this MAOI containing vine with this DMT containing leaf that's found on the different side of the jungle in a big pot for 4.5 hours until it's reduced to this much, and then you proportion it to this much based on people's body weight and psychological state, like that they would figure out if tea's better than just swallowing the leaf. I just have that kind of faith in the innate curiosity of mankind to discover the better method over trial and error like that.
Just because it has such an effect, they were probably selected for the better effects over time, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, no one selected for, I guess there's penis envy. Schwences, which actually they weren't selected for their strength. Yeah. They were selected for their strength, and they just ended up looking like a penis.
Oh, okay.
They weren't selected because they look like a penis. It's remarkable.
All mushrooms kind of look like a penis.
Have you seen penis envy ones?
I don't think I have. I saw that Hamilton did an episode on it. I gotta look it up now.
Really good. Like they're very long. They've got like no cap whatsoever, and they have a urethra. Like, it is spectacular how phallic these mushrooms can look. It's a really interesting interview by someone who is. That's what I love about Hamilton's podcast, and I am Hamilton's podcast producer now.
Yeah.
So I'm
cool.
I've got just.
You get to listen to those interviews.
On my shoulders. Yeah.
Hamilton's podcast. I'm a fan of it, so I'll put a link up to the
check it out on Patreon. But as of today,
I'm a subscriber.
Yes, as of yesterday, he has a free sponsor-driven version of his Patreon content. So the Patreon content's going to come out 3 to 4 times a week, and this is all new, original, uncut content. And then one of those per month of the already released Patreon content will be edited up a little bit to clean it up for a public audience. Yeah. Maybe take out some sensitive names or things like that, or just content that we think the Patreon community is a little more mature, and able to handle without harassing Hamilton. So we remove those things and then make them available publicly. So like on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere. You receive your podcast called Clandestine Conversations with Hamilton Morris.
Okay, cool.
So that's the free version, and the first episode came out this last weekend, and it is with the man, David Rose, this is pseudonym, who sold Steve Jobs his LSD.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to listen to that.
That's
a good
awesome one.
Thank you, Soren Shade, for coming in, bringing the leaves, the tree, and for being my first live guest. Help us out by giving us a like, subscribe, rate, comment. Intro and outro music is Memories of Thailand by Risey. Mid-roll music was called One-Legged Equilibrist Polka by Circus Homunculus. The Kratom Science Podcast is written and produced by me, Brian Gallagher, for KratomScience.com. Take care.